Hello there, how are you tonight? Before we begin tonight's quiet journey into the ancient world, you might want to dim the lights, get comfortable, and settle into a cozy place. These slow stories from the past are best enjoyed when the world around you grows calm. And if you enjoy relaxing history, don't forget to like and subscribe. It ensures you'll always have another story ready when sleep stays away. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from tonight. Now, let's travel back nearly 2,000 years to the crowded city of Rome. At first glance, life in Rome might seem impressive. Grand marble temples rising proudly above the city, and massive arenas filled with cheering crowds. Busy markets where merchants from across the empire traded exotic goods from distant lands. But behind that image was a very different reality. For ordinary people living in narrow streets and towering apartment buildings, daily life could be unpredictable, uncomfortable, and often surprisingly dangerous. Fires could spread through neighborhoods in a single night. Buildings sometimes collapsed without warning. Disease moved easily, and crime lurked in the shadows. Tonight, we'll slowly explore the hidden dangers of everyday life in ancient Rome. So relax, get comfortable, and let's step quietly into this world. Imagine standing on a hill overlooking Rome in the early morning. The city stretches out before you like a vast living maze. Thousands of rooftops crowd together under the rising sun, their clay tiles glowing softly in shades of red and orange. Thin lines of smoke drift upward from cooking fires. In the distance, the stone structure of the Colosseum casts a long shadow. From far away, Rome appears like the center of the world. And in many ways, it was. At the height of its power, Rome controlled lands that stretched across 3 continents. Its roads connected distant provinces. But the true story of Rome was written in the everyday lives of more than 1 million ordinary people who filled the streets. Garbage was sometimes thrown into the streets. Waste flowed through open drains. The smell of the city could change from one corner to the next. In these conditions, illness traveled easily. A cough in one apartment might quietly spread to dozens of others. And when night fell, the dangers only grew worse. Street lighting was rare. The moon and flickering lamps provided the only guidance. Thieves and criminals could move unnoticed. Many citizens preferred to stay indoors after sunset, locking their doors and hoping for quiet. Despite all of this, life in Rome continued. People still filled the markets each morning. Children still played in dusty courtyards. The city never truly stopped breathing. It was a place of incredible achievement, but also constant risk. Wealth and poverty stood side by side. Tonight, as we wander deeper into the ancient capital, we'll discover just how unpredictable daily life in Rome could be. Because tomorrow morning, as the sun rises over the empire's greatest city, you will arrive there yourself, a stranger stepping into the loud, restless heart of ancient Rome. And that is where our journey truly begins. The first thing you notice about Rome is the sound. Long before you see the city itself, the noise begins to reach you. A distant rumble of voices, wooden wheels grinding against stone, animals calling out impatiently, and merchants shouting somewhere beyond the walls. As you move closer along the dusty Roman road, the great capital slowly rises before you. Massive stone walls stretch across the hills, broken only by large gates where travelers, traders, and citizens pass in and out throughout the day. Guards stand watch near the entrance, leaning on their spears as carts creak past them in slow procession. You join the quiet line of travelers waiting to enter. Ahead of you is a merchant caravan loaded with sacks of grain. Behind you, a farmer guides two stubborn goats that seem uninterested in moving any faster than absolutely necessary. Above the gate, banners flutter lazily in the warm Mediterranean air. Rome does not look rushed from the outside, but as soon as you step through the gate, everything changes. The calm road suddenly transforms into movement. People everywhere. The street ahead stretches deep into the city, but it is already crowded. Citizens hurry past with baskets of vegetables. Laborers carry heavy tools across their shoulders. Slaves move quickly through the crowd, trying not to block the path of their masters. Carts roll by slowly, their wheels clattering loudly against the stone. A mule, pulling a wooden wagon, snorts impatiently as the driver calls out for people to clear the way. Move aside. Coming through. The smell of the city arrives almost immediately. Warm bread from a nearby bakery mixes with the sharp scent of animals, smoke from cooking fires, and the faint but unmistakable odor of waste. It is not unpleasant at first, just overwhelming. Rome is alive in every direction. If you stop walking for even a moment, the flow of people simply moves around you, like water flowing past a stone in a river. Above your head, the city rises higher than you expected. Tall apartment buildings line the narrow street. These structures, known as insulae, can reach 5 or 6 stories high. From the ground, they appear enormous, their upper floors leaning slightly outward as if they are watching the chaos below. Wooden balconies hang above the street. Laundry flutters in the breeze between windows. From somewhere above, someone empties a bucket of water into the gutter below, narrowly missing a passing pedestrian. You quickly learn one important rule of Rome. Always watch above you and below you. The road beneath your feet is paved with large stone blocks, worn smooth by centuries of carts and footsteps. Between the stones, shallow grooves mark the paths where wagon wheels have carved their way through the city over generations. But the ground is not always clean. Animals share these streets with people. Small stepping stones appear occasionally across the road, allowing pedestrians to cross without stepping directly into the mess. Even with these clever stones, careful walking is required. And still, the crowds continue to grow. You pass a small open market where vendors sit beneath simple cloth awnings. One man loudly advertises fresh olives. Another sells clay lamps, their shelves stacked neatly in rows. A woman offers baskets of figs, their sweet scent drifting gently through the warm air. Best figs in the city. She calls to passing customers. Not far away, a butcher works carefully at a wooden table, slicing pieces of meat while flies buzz lazily in the afternoon sun. The market is full of color and noise, but also tight with people. Every step requires patience. Somewhere nearby, a group of men argue loudly about politics. Further down the street, a storyteller has gathered a small audience around him as he recounts exaggerated tales of distant lands. In Rome, stories travel almost as quickly as people. Yet beneath the lively atmosphere, there is a quiet tension. The streets are narrow. In many places, two carts cannot pass one another easily. When they try, everything slows to a halt. Drivers shout. Pedestrians squeeze themselves against walls to avoid being struck by heavy wheels. Rome is a city constantly pulling people toward it. Soldiers returning from distant provinces. Farmers hoping to sell their crops. By midday, the narrow roads feel almost too small to contain everyone. Looking up again at the tall buildings above you, it becomes clear just how many people must live within these walls. Each person with their own story, their own worries, their own quiet hopes for tomorrow. But as the day slowly fades toward evening, the crowded streets of Rome begin to change. The markets close, the shadows grow longer, and the towering apartment buildings begin to reveal some of the hidden dangers, which is where our journey will continue next, as we step inside the towering homes of ordinary Romans, the insulae, and discover why living high above the streets of ancient Rome was often far more dangerous than it first appeared. As you continue deeper into the crowded streets of Rome, the towering buildings surrounding you begin to feel even more imposing. From the ground, they seem almost endless. 5, sometimes 6 floors, stacked high above the narrow street. Their upper windows catching the fading sunlight, while the lower levels remain in permanent shadow. These structures are known as insulata, apartment buildings, where the majority of Rome's population lives. For the wealthy citizens of Rome, life looks very different. They live in spacious houses called domus, hidden behind thick stone walls and quiet courtyards. Their homes contain gardens, fountains, and cool marble floors. But for the ordinary people of Rome, the bakers, laborers, porters, and craftsmen, the insula is where life unfolds. And while these buildings allow thousands of people to live within the crowded city, they are far from safe. Standing at the entrance of one such building, you notice how narrow the doorway is. A wooden door swings slowly on worn hinges. Inside, a dim staircase spirals upward. The air immediately changes. Outside, the city felt noisy and open. Inside the insula, the space is tight, warm, and filled with the quiet sounds of daily life. Footsteps echo on wooden stairs. A baby cries somewhere above. Someone nearby is grinding grain with a stone mill. The stairway itself creaks slightly as people climb past one another. These buildings were designed to hold many families in very small spaces. The lower floors, closest to the street, are the most desirable. Here, small shops often occupy the ground level, selling bread, wine, or simple household goods. Above them live families who can afford slightly better conditions. The higher you climb, the smaller the apartments become, and the more dangerous they can be. By the time you reach the upper levels, the rooms are often little more than cramped wooden spaces. Some apartments have no running water. Others rely on shared latrines several floors below. Residents must carry water upstairs in heavy clay jars each day. At night, The only light comes from small oil lamps flickering against the walls, and those lamps bring their own risks. Many insulae are built quickly and cheaply by landlords eager to house the growing population. Builders sometimes use poor quality materials. Cracks slowly creep across plaster walls. Wooden floors sag slightly beneath the weight of furniture and residents. During heavy rain, water may drip through damaged rooftops onto the floors below. Yet people continue living here because they have little choice. Rome is crowded, and space inside the city walls is limited. As evening approaches, more residents begin returning home from the streets below. You hear tired footsteps climbing the stairs. Doors open and close. Conversations drift through thin walls where neighbors live only a few feet apart. Some families cook simple meals over small braziers. Others sit quietly near the windows, hoping to catch a small breeze drifting through the warm city air. From the upper floors, the view of Rome can actually be quite beautiful. The rooftops stretch endlessly toward the distant hills, and the golden light of sunset reflects off temple domes and marble statues. For a moment, the city looks peaceful, but beneath that calm view, the building itself quietly reminds you of its fragility. A sudden creak echoes through the wooden beams. Someone upstairs shifts a heavy piece of furniture, and the floor responds with a long groan. Residents pause for only a moment. They are used to these sounds. Living inside an insula means accepting a certain level of uncertainty. Most days, nothing happens. Most days, the walls remain standing, but sometimes they don't. Throughout Rome's history, stories spread of entire apartment buildings collapsing without warning. Perhaps the foundation weakened slowly over time. Perhaps the landlord added too many floors in an attempt to earn more rent. When collapse comes, it can be sudden and terrifying. A loud, cracking sound in the middle of the night, followed by the thunder of falling timber and stone as several floors crash down into the street below. For the families sleeping inside, escape is often impossible. These tragedies happen often enough that Roman writers occasionally complain about them, warning readers about the dangers of living in tall insulae. Yet the buildings continue rising higher. Rome's population keeps growing, and landlords keep building upward. Because in a city where land is precious, height becomes the easiest solution. But the higher these apartments rise above the narrow streets, the greater the risks quietly become. And the buildings themselves are not the only danger waiting in Rome. Because even when the insulae remain standing, another threat constantly lurks among the wooden beams and the crowded kitchens. A threat capable of turning an entire neighborhood into chaos in a single night: fire. And in ancient Rome, fire could spread faster than anyone was prepared for, which is exactly what we'll explore next, when the quiet glow of an evening lamp becomes something far more dangerous. By the time night settles over Rome, the towering apartment buildings begin to fall quiet. Oil lamps glow softly behind narrow windows. Voices drift through thin wooden walls as families settle down. Somewhere below, a tavern still hums with laughter, but higher up in the insulae, the sounds of the city slowly fade. For many residents, night is the only time the crowded building truly rests. Yet even in this quiet moment, the structure around them is never completely still. Wood expands and contracts as the evening air cools. Beams shift under the weight of dozens of families stacked above one another. Inside many of Rome's insulae, The foundations were never designed to support such enormous weight. As the city grew more crowded, landlords often added extra floors to buildings that were already standing. More tenants meant more rent, and more rent meant more profit. But the walls beneath were rarely strengthened. Cracks might begin to form along the interior walls. At first they appear small, no wider than a thin line across the plaster. Residents notice them, of course. Someone might run their fingers across the crack while passing through the room. But repairs cost money, and landlords do not always respond quickly. Days turn into weeks. The crack grows longer. Meanwhile, the building continues, carrying the heavy weight of daily life. Every movement adds a little more strain, and the building remembers. A beam may bend slightly, causing the floor to tilt just enough for objects to slide slowly across the room. People in Rome are used to living close to danger. They sleep beneath ceilings, supported by beams they rarely think about, until the moment those beams finally give way. When a collapse happens, it is rarely graceful. The first sound might be a sharp crack echoing through the stairwell, then another. Floors begin to fall into one another like stacked cards. Timber splinters loudly. Stone and plaster crash downward. From the street below, the noise is terrifying. A cloud of dust exploding into the night air. Neighbors gather quickly, pulling at debris in desperate attempts to reach anyone trapped beneath the collapse. Ancient writers occasionally describe these tragedies, complaining about careless landlords and the dangers of poorly built housing. After such disasters, the city often clears the rubble and rebuilds quickly. Rome cannot afford empty space. For the people of Rome, risk is simply part of daily existence. Perhaps you begin to understand why some Romans prefer living on the lower floors, even if the rent is higher. And as dangerous as collapsing buildings may be, there is another threat that frightens the citizens of Rome even more. When that flame escapes its place, it can spread faster than the city itself can react. To the nights when the sky above Rome glows red, and entire neighborhoods hold their breath as flames race through the city. In a city as crowded and restless as Rome, fire is never far away. It begins, more often than not, with something small. A single oil lamp flickering beside a wooden wall. A cooking flame burning beneath a pot in a cramped kitchen. A forgotten candle slowly melting beside a window where the night breeze quietly moves the curtain. At first, no one notices. Inside the insulae, residents are busy finishing their evening routines. Families eat their last meals. Workers stretch their tired limbs after hours in the markets. But in one quiet corner of a crowded building, the flame grows. Perhaps a cloth catches fire. Perhaps dry wood simply ignites. Within seconds, the small flame begins climbing the wall. Inside Rome's apartment buildings, wood is everywhere: support beams, floors, and staircases. Fire does not struggle to find something to burn. It feeds easily. The smoke comes first, a thin gray ribbon curling toward the ceiling. Suddenly, the calm night is broken by a shout. Fire. Doors swing open. Feet rush across wooden floors as residents wake. The staircases act like chimneys, pulling heat and smoke upward. Flames leap quickly from one floor to the next, feeding on dry beams. From the street below, neighbors begin to see the orange glow in the windows. Shouts echo through the night. Residents rush outside, carrying bundles. Rome's streets are narrow. The buildings stand tightly packed together. When flames leap from one rooftop to another, the fire begins to travel. In response, Rome created the vigils. These men patrol at night, watching for smoke. They rush toward it, carrying buckets, hooks, and primitive pumps. Water must be carried from nearby fountains. Crowds of frightened citizens block the narrow streets, making it harder to reach the burning building. Sometimes the fire is already too large. In those moments, firefighters must begin tearing down nearby buildings in order to stop the flames from spreading. History remembers one disaster in particular, the Great Fire during the reign of Emperor Nero. 4 days, flames consumed entire districts of Rome. For ordinary citizens, memories never disappear. Even on quiet nights, the faint smell of smoke drifting through the streets can cause people to pause. Because in a city built from wood and cloth, a single spark can change everything. But the streets below hold dangers of their own. Join us as we step back into the crowded streets and discover how chaotic, simple travel through Rome could become. When morning returns to Rome, the city wakes quickly. Sunlight begins creeping over the tiled rooftops, slipping down the tall walls of the insulae and slowly reaching the streets below. One by one, wooden shutters open across the neighborhood. Bakers light their ovens. Merchants arrange baskets of fruit outside their small shops. For a brief moment, the streets feel almost peaceful. But that calm rarely lasts long, because as the day truly begins, Rome fills with movement once again. From every direction, people pour into the narrow roads. Workers hurry toward construction sites or workshops. Slaves carry water jars balanced carefully on their shoulders. Vendors push small carts filled with vegetables, fish, and bread toward the busy markets. Soon the quiet street transforms into something far more crowded. You quickly discover that walking through Rome requires patience. The roads themselves were laid centuries earlier, when the population of the city was much smaller. Now, with hundreds of thousands of people living inside the walls, those same streets must somehow carry far more traffic than they were ever designed to handle. And traffic in ancient Rome is not limited to people. Carts are everywhere. Heavy wooden wagons creak slowly across the stone pavement, pulled by stubborn mules or powerful oxen. These vehicles carry everything the city needs to survive: grain from distant farms, wine from the countryside, marble blocks for new buildings. The wheels of these carts are thick and solid. As they roll, they produce a constant grinding sound that echoes between the tall buildings. Clatter, clatter, clatter. Drivers shout commands to their animals. Pedestrians step quickly aside. In some areas of the city, the streets are so narrow that only one cart can pass at a time. When 2 wagons approach from opposite directions, everything slows to a frustrating halt. Drivers argue loudly. Animals snort and stamp their hooves. People waiting behind the blocked carts begin to complain. Eventually, one driver must guide his wagon backward until a small opening appears along the street. Only then can the other cart squeeze past, its wooden wheels brushing dangerously close to the walls. For anyone walking through the city, these moments require careful attention, because carts are not the only obstacles. Horses trot through the streets carrying messengers, or wealthy citizens riding toward appointments. Donkeys wander patiently beside their owners, loaded with sacks of grain or baskets of olives. Sometimes entire groups of animals move together. A farmer might lead a small herd of goats through the city toward a market stall. And wherever animals go, the streets quickly become less pleasant. Roman roads are paved with large stone blocks. Yet those stones often hide a slippery mixture of mud, water, and animal waste. Walking carelessly can lead to an embarrassing fall. To help pedestrians cross the messier parts of the street, large stepping stones appear in certain places. These raised blocks allow people to walk across the road without stepping directly into the filth below. They are clever solutions, but they also create new challenges because carts must still pass between them. Drivers carefully guide their wheels through the narrow gaps, sometimes with only inches to spare. Standing near these stones can feel surprisingly dangerous. A distracted driver might push a cart too close, leaving pedestrians scrambling. Yet, despite all this chaos, the flow of the city never truly stops. Rome depends on these crowded streets. Every loaf of bread, every jar of olive oil, every building stone must travel through them before reaching its destination. By midday, the noise becomes overwhelming. Metal tools strike against stone from nearby construction sites. Vendors shout loudly to attract customers. Animals call out impatiently as drivers struggle to guide them through the crowd. Even conversations must compete with the constant roar of activity. The famous Roman writer Juvenal once complained that the city was so loud at night that sleep became nearly impossible. But during the day, the streets are even louder. And still, there is another hidden danger within this daily chaos. Because when so many people move through narrow streets filled with carts and animals, accidents are inevitable. A cartwheel might strike an unaware pedestrian. A frightened horse could suddenly bolt through the crowd, or a heavy wagon might lose control while rolling downhill on the smooth stone pavement. For those living in Rome, simple travel across the city is rarely peaceful. It requires alert eyes, quick reactions, and sometimes luck. And as the sun begins to sink lower in the sky, the streets slowly begin to change once again. The busiest carts disappear first. Roman law actually restricts heavy wagons from traveling during daylight hours in many areas, forcing them to move mostly at night, which means that when darkness finally falls, the sounds of carts may actually grow louder. But night brings different dangers as well, because once the sunlight disappears from Rome's narrow streets, the shadows grow deeper. And not everyone walking through those shadows has peaceful intentions, which is exactly where our quiet journey through ancient Rome continues next. When the city, after dark, reveals a far more uncertain side of itself. As the sun slowly disappears behind the distant hills, the city of Rome begins another quiet transformation. The noise of the markets fades first. Vendors pack away their baskets of fruit and vegetables. Wooden shutters close over small shops along the street. Families prepare their evening meals inside crowded apartments. The smell of cooked food drifts through the air. For a short while, the city feels calmer. But night in Rome does not bring the peaceful silence many modern cities enjoy. Instead, the streets begin to change in a different way. Because once darkness settles between the tall buildings, the city becomes a place of deep shadows and uncertain corners. Unlike modern streets, ancient Rome has very little public lighting. A few oil lamps may flicker outside taverns or important buildings. Most roads remain dim and difficult to see. The narrow alleys between insulae grow especially dark as the upper floors block the moonlight. In these places, the darkness feels thick, and within that darkness, some people move more confidently than others. Most citizens of Rome try to return home before the night grows too deep. Families lock their doors and remain inside. But not everyone stays indoors. Some workers still travel. Messengers hurry across the city, carrying important news. Late customers visit taverns where wine and conversation continue long after sunset. Among these people, others move quietly through the shadows. Thieves, pickpockets, groups of young troublemakers looking for easy targets. The crowded conditions of Rome make crime surprisingly common. In the busy confusion of the streets, a skilled thief can disappear almost instantly. During the day, crowds offer some protection. But at night, those same empty streets create opportunity. Imagine walking home through one of Rome's narrow alleys after visiting a friend. The moonlight barely reaches the ground. Your footsteps echo softly against the stone walls. For a moment, the street seems completely empty. Then you hear another sound behind you, a faint movement, a quiet footstep. In many cases, it might simply be another traveler heading home. Roman writers described the dangers of nighttime travel. One poet warned that walking after dark could feel like moving through a maze. Sometimes the criminals work alone. A pickpocket might quietly slip through the shadows, watching for someone distracted or carrying a visible purse. With a quick movement of skilled fingers, the purse disappears before the victim even notices. Other times, the threats are more direct. Groups of young men might block a narrow street, demanding money or belongings from anyone unlucky enough to pass through. The crowded insulae create perfect hiding places. A thief can vanish into a stairwell, climb several floors, and disappear. To help control crime and fires at night, the Roman government established a group known as the Vigils. These men patrol the streets after dark, carrying lanterns and wooden staffs. They also act as a form of nighttime police. When the Vigils walk through a neighborhood, their presence brings a small sense of security. The glow of their lanterns pushes back the darkness for a moment. Yet Rome is enormous. Even the Vigils cannot patrol every alley. So many citizens choose a simpler solution. They avoid the streets at night whenever possible. Inside their homes, doors are secured. Families gather around small lamps while the noises of the city slowly fade outside. Occasionally, shouts still echo through the distant arguments outside taverns or the hurried footsteps of someone trying to reach home. The night passes slowly, and when morning finally returns, the dangers of darkness fade once again beneath the rising sunlight. But the quiet truth remains. Rome may be the greatest city in the ancient world, yet its citizens cannot escape the risks hidden within. Sometimes the threat comes from something far less dramatic, yet far more constant. Something found beneath your feet every time you step outside. The streets themselves. While Rome may be impressive to look at, they are rarely clean. For millions, the city's sanitation creates problems that affect nearly everyone, which is where our story continues next, as we look at the dirtier side of life. As evening settles gently over the city of Rome, the familiar noise of the day begins to soften. The sun lowers behind the distant hills, casting long golden shadows across the rooftops and temple columns. One by one, merchants begin closing their stalls in the crowded markets. Wooden shutters creak as shopkeepers secure their doors for the night. For a moment, the city feels almost peaceful. Warm light spills from bakeries where the last loaves of bread are pulled from glowing ovens. The scent of roasted meat, drifts out from taverns where travelers and workers gather for a final meal. But as the sky slowly darkens, something else quietly changes. Rome begins to empty. Not completely, of course. A city this large never truly sleeps. Yet many ordinary citizens begin making their way home before darkness fully arrives. Because walking through Rome after sunset is rarely comfortable. As the last sunlight fades between the tall insulae, the streets grow dim very quickly. The upper floors of the apartment buildings lean over the narrow roads like silent watchers, blocking much of the remaining light from the sky. Soon, most of the streets exist in shadow. Oil lamps appear here and there along the entrances of taverns and temples. But these scattered lights do little to brighten the city as a whole. Between them stretch long corridors of darkness. If you step into the street at this hour, your eyes must slowly adjust. The familiar buildings look different in the dim light. Doorways appear deeper, alleys seem narrower, and sounds travel differently as well. During the day, the city's constant activity creates a steady roar. But at night, individual sounds stand out more clearly. Footsteps echo against the stone. A distant cart rattles slowly as drivers take advantage of nighttime hours, when traffic laws allow heavier wagons to move through the city. Somewhere in the distance, laughter bursts out from a tavern before fading again. Walking carefully, you notice how uneven the streets feel. Puddles gather in small dips along the road, reflecting the faint glow of nearby lamps. Occasionally, you pass other travelers heading home. A merchant hurries along with a small lantern held close to his chest. Two workers walk together quietly, their conversation low and tired. Most people move quickly. No one lingers longer than necessary, because once the night grows deeper, Rome's streets can feel surprisingly uncertain. Part of the danger comes simply from the darkness itself. It is easy to stumble over loose stones. Sometimes water from upper apartments is thrown carelessly from windows, splashing into the street without warning. Roman citizens even develop a dark sense of humor about this risk. Writers joked that you should worry more about what falls from windows above, broken pottery, old food, or worse. These small hazards remind everyone that nighttime in Rome requires attention and caution. Another reason many citizens avoid the streets after sunset is the simple unpredictability of crowds that remain. Taverns stay open late. Inside, groups of men gather around cups of wine, sharing stories or arguing loudly about politics and sport. Most nights, the conversations remain friendly, but occasionally tempers flare. When arguments spill into the street, they can quickly attract unwanted attention. Passersby find themselves caught between shouting voices. In the darkness, even small disagreements can feel more threatening. This is why many Romans prefer the safety of their homes. Inside their apartments, the sounds of the city become muffled. Families sit near small oil lamps, finishing their meals or preparing for sleep. Children grow quiet, doors are closed and secured. Outside, the streets continue their slow nighttime rhythm. The patrols of the vigils pass through neighborhoods carrying lanterns. Their presence offers reassurance to anyone still awake. A reminder that someone is watching over the sleeping city, but even they cannot control everything. Rome is simply too large, too crowded, too full of hidden corners and unexpected dangers. And while the darkness brings its own risks, The daylight hours reveal another side of life in this enormous city. Because beneath the movement of carts and crowds, beneath the towering apartment buildings and busy markets, lies a quieter problem. The problem of sanitation, or rather, the lack of it. Because when more than 1 million people live within one city, keeping the streets clean becomes far more difficult than anyone might expect. And tomorrow morning, when the first sunlight returns to Rome's narrow roads, you will begin to see exactly what that means. When the sun rises once again over Rome, the city slowly returns to life. Morning light spreads across the rooftops, warming the clay tiles and slowly reaching the narrow streets below. Shopkeepers unlock their doors. Bakers begin preparing fresh loaves of bread. Vendors push their small carts into the marketplaces, where another busy day will soon unfold. At first glance, everything appears normal, but as the city wakes, another reality becomes impossible to ignore. The streets of Rome are rarely clean. In a city where hundreds of thousands of people live within tight walls, waste becomes an everyday problem. Every household produces it, every market generates it, and somehow all of it must go somewhere. Unlike modern cities, Rome has no organized system of garbage collection moving quietly through the neighborhoods each morning. Instead, much of the waste simply ends up in the streets. Walking along the stone roads, you begin to notice the gutters that run beside them. These shallow channels are meant to carry away rainwater and other liquids that flow through the city, but they carry much more than water. Food scraps from yesterday's meals drift slowly along the edges of the street. Broken pottery pieces lie scattered between the stones. Wilted vegetables and fish remains from nearby markets sometimes sit where they were thrown, waiting for animals or scavengers to remove them. Occasionally, someone opens a window above the street and empties a bucket directly into the gutter below. Residents shout warnings before doing this at least most of the time. Look out below. Even with the warning, pedestrians sometimes jump aside at the last moment to avoid an unpleasant splash. This practice may sound surprising, but in crowded insulae, where many apartments lack private sanitation, people must dispose of waste somehow. The result is a city that constantly struggles with cleanliness. Animals add to the situation. Donkeys, horses, and oxen travel the streets every day, pulling heavy carts filled with goods. These hard-working animals leave behind waste of their own, which mixes quickly with the mud and dust along the roads. In dry weather, the mixture becomes powdery and unpleasant, stirred into the air by passing carts and wandering crowds. In rainy weather, the streets transform into slippery pathways where water and debris collect between the worn stones. Yet Rome is not completely without solutions. The city actually possesses one of the most impressive drainage systems in the ancient world. Deep beneath the streets runs a network of tunnels designed to carry water away from the city. The most famous of these ancient drains is the Cloaca Maxima, an enormous sewer system originally built centuries earlier. At first, it was designed simply to remove floodwater. Over time, it became an important channel for draining waste away. But even such remarkable engineering cannot solve every sanitation problem in a city this large. Many neighborhoods remain crowded and poorly maintained. In the busiest markets, the ground becomes littered with scraps. Fishmongers throw away scales and bones. Butchers leave behind pieces of meat that attract buzzing flies. The smell of the marketplace changes depending on the hour. Early in the morning, Fresh produce and bread dominate the air. By afternoon, the scents become heavier, and by evening, the mixture of food, animals, and streets can create an atmosphere difficult to ignore. For the citizens of Rome, this is simply part of daily life. They learn to navigate the streets carefully. Sandals are designed with thick soles to protect feet from the uneven ground. Children grow up understanding which areas of the street to avoid. Merchants sweep the space in front of their shops when possible, hoping to keep their immediate surroundings slightly cleaner than the rest. Still, sanitation remains an ongoing challenge, and where sanitation struggles, health problems often follow. Because when waste gathers in crowded spaces, it attracts more than just unpleasant smells. Flies multiply quickly. Rats explore the gutters, searching for scraps. Standing water becomes a breeding ground for insects that spread illness from one part of the city to another. The Romans themselves do not fully understand how disease travels, but they certainly notice the patterns. Certain neighborhoods seem to experience more sickness than others. Illness spreads quickly through crowded apartments. A cough in one room can soon be heard in another. And when so many people share the same environment, sickness rarely stays isolated for long. As the day moves forward and the markets fill with people once again, most citizens simply accept these conditions. Rome is powerful. Rome is wealthy. Rome is magnificent. But Rome is also messy. And beneath the beauty of its temples lies a city constantly struggling with the simple realities of everyday life. Yet sanitation is only one piece of a larger problem. Because when millions of people live close together in crowded buildings, illness does not just appear occasionally. Sometimes it spreads quietly, quickly, and far more easily than anyone in the ancient world fully understood, which is where our journey through Rome continues next. As we explore how disease could move through the crowded capital, as the day continues in Rome, the streets remain full of life. Merchants call out to passing customers. Children weave through the crowds, chasing one another between market stalls. Workers move steadily through the city, carrying tools, baskets, and jars as they hurry toward their daily tasks. From a distance, the scene might appear lively and energetic, yet hidden within this constant movement lies a quieter danger one that spreads silently: disease. In a city as enormous as Rome, illness rarely remains isolated for long. Historians believe that at the height of its power, the population of Rome may have reached nearly 1 million people. For the ancient world, this number was almost unimaginable. Most cities of the time were only a fraction of that size. But Rome had become the center of a vast empire. People arrived constantly from distant province traders, from North Africa, sailors from Greece, soldiers returning from campaigns in the far corners of Europe and the Middle East. Each traveler brought stories, goods, and sometimes sickness. Inside the crowded insulae, families lived close together in small rooms stacked one above another. Neighbors shared staircases, hallways, and water sources. If one person became ill, others nearby were rarely far behind. Imagine a narrow apartment room where a family gathers in the evening. The air is warm, the windows small. Someone coughs quietly while preparing a simple meal. At first, it may seem like nothing more than fatigue from a long day of work, but over the next few days, the cough grows worse. Soon another member of the family feels weak. A neighbor on the same floor begins to complain of similar symptoms. Without understanding exactly how diseases spread, the people of Rome simply try their best to care for the sick. Some visit doctors who rely on a mixture of observation, herbal remedies, and traditional theories about the balance of the human body. Roman medicine is surprisingly advanced for its time in some ways, but it still lacks knowledge about bacteria or viruses. Doctors might recommend rest, special diets, or medicinal plants. Sometimes these treatments help. Other times, the illness continues to spread. In crowded districts where sanitation is poor and fresh air is limited, sickness can move quickly. The same narrow streets that bring life and trade into the city also allow disease to travel easily between neighborhoods. Markets become gathering places, not just for goods, but for germs carried unknowingly by the thousands of people who passed through them. Even public spaces designed for relaxation can contribute to the problem. Rome's famous bathhouses attract enormous crowds of visitors each afternoon. Hundreds of people share the warm pools and steam rooms, enjoying conversation and comfort after the day's work. But when one visitor carries illness, many others may leave with it as well. Throughout Roman history, several major epidemics swept through the empire. One of the most devastating occurred during the reign of Marcus Aurelius. This outbreak, known today as the Antonine Plague, spread rapidly. Ancient sources describe widespread sickness, high fevers, and thousands of deaths across the empire. In a city as crowded as Rome, such outbreaks could feel overwhelming. Funeral processions moved slowly through the streets. Families mourned loved ones, while physicians struggled to understand the mysterious illness. And yet, even during difficult times, the city continued moving forward. Markets still opened. Workshops continued producing goods. Life carried on because it had to. For the ordinary citizen, avoiding illness completely was almost impossible. A single cough or fever might simply be accepted as another risk of living inside the empire's greatest city. Over time, Romans developed small habits that offered some protection. Public baths, for example, encouraged regular washing. Aqueducts brought fresh water from distant mountains into the city, supplying fountains where citizens could collect drinking water. These systems helped improve hygiene in many parts of Rome, but they were not perfect solutions. In poorer neighborhoods, especially, overcrowding remained a constant challenge. As evening slowly approaches again, the busy markets begin to thin out. Merchants pack away their goods. The city seems calm once more. Yet beneath that calm, the invisible movement of illness continues quietly. Most days, people recover. Most days, the city wakes again with the rising sun. But the possibility of sickness is never far away. Because when so many lives intersect within one crowded place, the health of the entire city becomes fragile. And illness is not the only hidden danger connected to daily survival in Rome. Even something as simple as drinking water can sometimes bring unexpected problems of its own, which is exactly where our journey continues next, as we explore the surprising risks hidden within the water of the ancient capital. Water, it is essential to life, yet in the crowded streets of Rome, it can also carry unseen danger. From the distant hills, aqueducts bring fresh water flowing steadily into the city. Marble fountains stand at busy intersections, where citizens collect clean water for drinking, cooking, and washing. Some houses, particularly the wealthier domas, even have private taps, while most insulated residents share communal wells. At first glance, the system seems remarkable engineering, so advanced that water from miles away can reach the heart of the city. But even this ingenuity cannot protect against the hidden risks that accompany city life. The first problem begins with overcrowding. Thousands draw from the same fountains, touching the basin edges with dirty hands. Small particles, invisible to the eye, accumulate quietly. Bacteria and parasites hitch rides from person to person. One sip may seem harmless. Another may bring fever, stomach cramps, or something far worse. Heavy rain sometimes washes debris into fountains. In some neighborhoods, sediment slowly gathers in the basins. Some residents attempt to purify their water using boiling or settling, but many do not understand the dangers. Imagine a crowded apartment building. Families draw water for the day from a shared fountain just outside the insula. Children play near the basin while someone fills a large clay jar. All seems routine, but inside one jar, unseen to the eye, a tiny contamination has taken hold. By the time the water reaches the kitchen, it has already begun its quiet work, spreading illness to anyone who drinks it. In certain seasons, disease becomes more prevalent. Hot weather encourages the growth of bacteria. Sudden rainfall carries new contaminants into the city. The risk grows for the poor, who rely entirely on public sources. Even fountains in wealthier areas cannot guarantee safety. Lead-lined channels carry water through the city. Romans do not yet understand the effects of lead, but symptoms like fatigue and headaches are absorbed into daily life. Yet, despite these risks, water remains essential. Life in Rome is impossible without it. Families collect it daily, laborers quench their thirst, and merchants keep their stalls stocked. This constant need creates a delicate balance. Each sip carries life, but sometimes also danger. Citizens do their best to manage these hazards. They carefully select their water source and avoid drinking stagnant water. But in a city as massive and crowded as Rome, complete safety is impossible. As night falls, citizens close their doors, hoping that today's water has caused no harm. They are unaware of the invisible dangers that may be spreading quietly through their neighborhoods. And even when water itself seems safe, the food on the market stalls presents another challenge. A problem that, if ignored, can turn a simple meal into a source of illness. Which is where our journey continues next, as we explore the hidden risks in the bustling food markets of ancient Rome. As dawn spreads across the rooftops of Rome, the city awakens once more. The narrow streets are alive with merchants preparing their stalls. Vibrant colors catch the morning light. Piles of olives, bright red apples, fresh loaves of bread, bundles of herbs, and fish glistening with the last remnants of the night. Bakers open ovens, filling the air with the rich scent of freshly baked bread. The markets hum with life as buyers, sellers, and children weaving through the crowds create a constant rhythm of movement and sound. The markets are the heart of the city, essential, energetic, and alive. They provide sustenance for the millions of citizens crammed into insulae and domus alike. But beneath the colorful display and lively chatter lies a hidden risk that the citizens of Rome often cannot see. Food spoils quickly. Without refrigeration or modern storage, perishable goods remain exposed to the sun, the heat of the city, and the thousands of people moving nearby. Fish, meat, and milk, especially in the warm summer months, can become dangerous if consumed too late. Flies buzz relentlessly over the stalls, landing on fresh produce, raw meat, and leftover scraps. Their presence spreads germs from one item to the next. Imagine walking through the market. A fishmonger displays his catch along a small wooden table. A cat prowls nearby, hoping to snatch an unattended morsel. Children brush past the stall, accidentally knocking over a basket of vegetables. Dust, mud, and bits of refuse from the crowded streets mix into the produce. Everything is within reach of hundreds of hands that touch, handle, and examine the goods before purchase. Even fruits and vegetables can carry hidden dangers. They are washed in whatever water is available, sometimes from a nearby fountain, sometimes from a bucket collected hours before. If the water is contaminated, so too are the food items. Bread, a staple for most Romans, presents its own challenges. Bakers often sell the loaves directly from the oven or display them on open tables. Exposure to the air allows mold spores or bacteria to settle, slowly altering the freshness. Many poorer citizens may purchase slightly older bread, unaware that it has begun to ferment or spoil. The wealthy have a slight advantage. They can store food in cooler rooms or underground cellars, protected from sun and pests. But even they are not entirely safe. Transportation from farms or distant regions can take days, and any spoilage along the way may go unnoticed until it reaches the table. These market conditions create a quiet but constant threat. A simple meal, prepared with care, could still bring illness if the ingredients were tainted. Sometimes the results are obvious: nausea, vomiting, or fever after consuming spoiled fish or meat. Other times, the effects are slower and more subtle, weakening individuals over days or weeks without immediate recognition. For the city as a whole, outbreaks of foodborne illness are inevitable. Poor sanitation, crowded living conditions, and limited understanding of hygiene combine to make food markets a potential source of sickness. Yet the Romans do not stop visiting the markets. Life in Rome depends on the constant movement of food and people. Citizens learn to inspect items carefully, rely on trusted vendors, and cook meals thoroughly whenever possible. These small practices reduce but never eliminates the risks inherent in daily life. Despite the danger, the bustling markets remain a place of community, commerce, and survival. They are where the rhythm of the city is most tangible, where the pulse of Roman life beats strongest. But as essential as these markets are, survival requires more than simply navigating food safely. Daily labor, construction, and other occupations carry risks of their own, work that can be physically exhausting and surprisingly dangerous. And it is this world of labor, sweat, and risk that we explore next, in the daily lives of ordinary Romans facing dangerous jobs just to survive. In the crowded streets of Rome, survival is not only about navigating narrow roads, spoiled food, or contaminated water. It is also about labor. For the ordinary citizens of Rome, work is rarely comfortable, and it is almost never safe. From sunrise to sunset, people perform tasks that demand strength, precision, and endurance, often in dangerous conditions. Construction is one of the most perilous occupations. The towering insulae, aqueducts, and grand temples all require thousands of laborers. They move heavy stones, lift timber, and mix mortar under the relentless sun on rudimentary scaffolds made of lashed wooden beams. A misstep can send a worker tumbling several meters to the street below, surrounded by clattering tools or a collapsing scaffold. Builders face constant risk, but they are not alone. Dock workers at the port of Ostia handle goods arriving from across the empire. Barrels of wine, sacks of grain, and crates of goods must be loaded onto carts or lifted from ships with heavy pulleys. Mistimed movements, unstable cargo, or shifting crates can crush fingers, limbs, or worse. Even artisans confront daily hazards. Blacksmiths face glowing metal, hammers that miss their mark, and furnaces hot enough to cause severe burns. Potters inhale fine dust and risk serious cuts from sharp tools. Carpenters navigate splintered wood and saws with only basic protection. Street vendors carry their own subtle dangers. Carts and baskets weigh heavily on tired shoulders. Crowded streets mean constant jostling from passers-by, runaway animals, or falling debris from above. A moment of inattention can result in injury. Even the poorest citizen slaves and day laborers face daily risks. Many take jobs with little choice and even less oversight. Tasks are often assigned quickly, with little concern for safety. Mistakes are punished severely. Accidents may go unrecorded, quietly absorbed into city life. Some jobs bring the additional burden of exposure to disease. Laborers in public latrines or sewage channels risk illness simply by doing their job. They carry waste away and handle materials no one else wishes to touch. Their work is vital, yet invisible and unnoticed by the privileged. Despite these hazards, the laborers of Rome persist. Their effort underpins the city's growth, allowing monumental buildings to rise and marketplaces to flourish. Without their work, the city would not survive, let alone thrive. Yet every day carries a quiet tension. The collapse of a scaffold or a fall from a rooftop could instantly change a family's fortune. For workers, awareness of these dangers becomes instinctive. Each movement is measured, each step calculated. Yet even the most careful laborer cannot predict every risk. As the sun begins to set and workers return home, exhausted and dusty, the city takes on a new rhythm. Their labor does not end completely. Some must prepare for night shifts, unloading goods from later arriving ships or carrying water. Still, the majority retreat to their homes, where the dangers of labor give way to other, quieter threats that await in the dark. The lives of ordinary Romans are defined by constant effort work that sustains the city and keeps the empire moving forward. Yet each day reminds them that survival is not guaranteed, even for those who perform the most essential tasks. Which leads us next into a closer look at life for the poorest residents, those living in crowded slums, where every day is a delicate balance. In the heart of Rome, far from the grandeur of marble temples and wide avenues, lie the crowded slums where the city's poorest residents live. These neighborhoods, often called insulae, are packed tightly with people, families stacked one above another, rising in structures that scrape the sky. Life here is cramped, noisy, and filled with challenges invisible to the wealthier citizens strolling through the forum. The first thing one notices is the density. Narrow staircases twist upward, barely wide enough for two people to pass each other. Hallways are dim, lit only by small oil lamps or the occasional shaft of sunlight filtering through a window. Rooms are tiny, sometimes no larger than a single bed, and they are shared by entire families. Children sleep next to parents, and neighbors share walls thin enough that conversations and arguments are overheard even through the night. Sanitation is a constant struggle. Latrines are communal, sometimes just a bucket or pit shared by dozens of residents. Water must be fetched from distant fountains, carried up multiple flights of stairs, and stored in jars that may serve other purposes. In these crowded conditions, illness spreads quickly. Fevers and coughs move silently through families and across floors. Noise is never ending. Outside the doors, the city never truly sleeps. Children run and shout through narrow corridors. The clatter of carts hammering from nearby construction and the distant shouts of market vendors all combine into a constant background hum. Food is another daily challenge. The poor often eat whatever they can afford, typically bread, porridge, or vegetables. Meat is a rare luxury. The risk of spoiled food is high, and every meal carries the possibility of illness. Employment is unpredictable. Day laborers, porters, and craftsmen may find work for a day or go without for several. Each day is a calculation. How to feed the family, how to pay the rent, how to survive until tomorrow. Children often contribute, running errands, helping in workshops, or assisting their parents in small trades. Even leisure is minimal, usually limited to brief moments in crowded courtyards or on the rooftops. Despite the hardships, life in the slums is not without community. Neighbors look out for each other. Shared meals, communal celebrations, and small acts of kindness are threads of humanity weaving through the struggle. In narrow corridors and stairwells, residents exchange news, gossip, and advice. Yet danger is never far away. Fires can break out in a single apartment and spread rapidly through the wooden structures. Collapse is a constant threat as insulae age and foundations weaken under the weight of countless residents. Crime hides in the alleys, and disputes over space, water, or food can escalate quickly. Vigilance is necessary at all times. Even at night, there is little peace. Children cry, neighbors argue, and the sounds of the city drift up through the narrow streets. Sleep is often light, interrupted by the knowledge that the world outside carries both invisible dangers and very visible threats. Yet, within these slums, ordinary Romans endure. They adapt, they survive. Life here is harsh, but it is also vibrant. Each day is a careful balance between necessity and risk, a reminder that survival in Rome is never guaranteed. And while the poor struggle in these crowded neighborhoods, another group faces dangers even more severe: the slaves of Rome. In the heart of the city and across the countryside, a quiet but harsh reality defines the lives of thousands of people in Rome: slavery. For slaves, life is far more precarious than for even the poorest free citizens. They are bound by the demands of their masters, their freedom stripped away, and their daily existence dictated entirely by work and obedience. While some slaves live in the household of a wealthy family, attending to domestic tasks, others toil in fields or construction sites. Domestic slaves wake early. They carry water from fountains, sweep floors, and prepare meals in kitchens that smell of smoke and herbs. They polish the marble of the atrium, dust the furniture, and tend to the children of the household. Every action is observed, every mistake punished. A dropped vase or a burned meal could bring a swift and severe reprimand. Outside the city, other slaves labor in physically demanding environments. Fields under the hot Italian sun demand endless bending and harvesting. Quarry and construction slaves move heavy stone blocks or haul timber for public buildings. The work is exhausting, relentless, and dangerous. A misstep on the uneven terrain or a fall from scaffolding could be fatal. Slaves receive no compensation for these risks. Slaves also carry the hidden burden of constant scrutiny. In households, they are watched for any sign of disobedience or rebellion. In workshops and fields, overseers enforce labor with strict discipline. Punishments are not only physical, but often humiliating. Even small complaints about exhaustion, sickness, or injury might be dismissed, met with punishment. Yet despite these hardships, some slaves find ways to navigate their difficult existence. Skilled slaves, those trained in crafts, literacy, or specialized labor can gain a small measure of respect or autonomy. They may manage accounts, teach children, or produce valuable goods. In these roles, life is marginally safer, though freedom remains out of reach. Still, danger follows them wherever they go. Disease spreads easily among crowded slave quarters, particularly when sharing a single room. Food may be meager, often scraps left over from the household's table. Sanitation is poor, and exhaustion is constant. Every day is a test of endurance. Even in cases of relative comfort, the psychological toll is immense. Slaves rarely control their own movements or choices. They witness the privileges of free citizens while enduring grueling labor. The knowledge that escape is nearly impossible and that their bodies belong to another person weighs heavily. Yet within this oppressive reality, slaves develop subtle strategies for survival. Bonds form between fellow laborers. Quiet acts of kindness, shared meal, or a whispered warning become lifelines in a harsh world. Some slaves learn trades that may eventually allow them to buy freedom, though this is a long and uncertain path. Slaves live constantly on the edge of danger. Every task carries the risk of injury. Every movement must be calculated. And yet, despite the hardships, life must continue. Without their labor, Rome itself could not function. Households would lack food and water, construction projects would stall, and the vast machinery of the empire would grind to a halt. In many ways, the survival of Rome depends on those who live under the strictest constraints, those whose labor is taken for granted. As the streets of Rome bustle with citizens and slaves alike, the dangers of daily life extend far beyond work. Traveling through the city presents its own challenges, with crowds and narrow streets creating constant tension and quiet risk. Next, we follow the paths of all these Romans as they navigate the streets themselves, a daily journey filled with unseen threats. Walking through the streets of Rome is never a quiet or simple experience. From sunrise to sunset, the city pulses with life, movement, and a quiet tension that only grows when the population is packed tightly together. For citizens, laborers, merchants, slaves, and travelers alike, moving from one place to another is not just a matter of reaching a destination. It is an exercise in alertness, balance, and careful judgment. The streets themselves are narrow, often barely wide enough for two carts to pass side by side. Insulae loom overhead, their upper floors extending over the road, casting long shadows that obscure the path. Each step must be deliberate. The uneven stone pavement can be treacherous, and the constant mixture of mud, waste, and spilled water makes missteps common. A careless step might send a pedestrian slipping, or worse, tumbling beneath the wheels of a passing cart. Traffic is unpredictable. Wagons creak and groan as oxen or mules pull them along the crowded streets. The wheels grind against the stones, echoing off the tall walls and creating an almost constant clatter. Drivers shout commands to their animals, attempting to navigate the chaos while avoiding collisions with pedestrians or other carts. A moment of inattention can result in bruises, broken limbs, or serious injury. Horses carry riders or messages swiftly through the crowd, their hooves striking sparks from the stone streets. Donkeys, stubborn and slow, weave through pedestrians, often stopping without warning. Children dart across the street, chasing one another, completely unaware of the dangers surrounding them. Animals, carts, and humans all share the same narrow path, creating a constant tension that never fully disappears. Crowds form in front of shops and markets. Merchants call out loudly to attract attention, their voices competing with the clatter of wagons and the neighing of animals. Passers-by must navigate between baskets of fruit, barrels of oil, and fish laid out on tables, all while avoiding debris and waste. Travel at night adds another layer of danger. Street lighting is minimal, provided only by small oil lamps scattered across the city. Shadows stretch across the alleys, hiding potential hazards or opportunistic thieves. Citizens are cautious, walking quickly, keeping their belongings close, and avoiding areas they perceive as unsafe. Even the patrolling vigils, tasked with preventing fires and crime, cannot cover every dark corner. Yet movement through the streets is essential. Families fetch water, workers travel to construction sites, and merchants deliver goods. Every day, millions of Romans traverse these narrow roads, carrying with them both hope and risk. Survival often depends not only on speed and agility, but also on careful observation and an instinctive understanding of the city's rhythms. Over time, residents learn to anticipate certain patterns. Morning brings busy merchants and street laborers. Midday is filled with the sounds of carts and bustling markets. Evening sees the return of families heading home, while night brings quieter, but no less dangerous, movement. Each time of day has its unique hazards, requiring constant awareness. Even a short walk can become an adventure or a trial. A miscalculated step or a panicked animal could result in injury or delay. And yet, despite the chaos, life in Rome continues uninterrupted. Citizens adapt, and the city's rhythm persists, day after day. For those traveling the streets, danger is not only physical, but psychological. Constant vigilance becomes second nature. And while streets are fraught with hazards, certain public spaces like bathhouses offer a brief respite from these challenges. Yet, even here, safety is relative, and risks continue in unexpected ways. Next, we step quietly into the public baths, where relaxation and hygiene intersect with subtle dangers. In the midst of Rome's bustling streets and crowded insulae, public baths stand as a place of respite. These bathhouses, or thermae, are a cornerstone of Roman daily life, offering warmth, cleanliness, and a rare moment of relaxation. But even within their marble walls and steaming pools, danger quietly lingers. The baths are often enormous. Large halls echo with conversation, the slosh of water, and the clatter of sandals on polished floors. Pools of varying temperatures, some hot, some warm, some cool, invite citizens to bathe, soak, or simply sit and converse. Steam rises from the water, curling around the vaulted ceilings and filling the air with a heavy warmth. For many Romans, this is one of the few opportunities to rest after a long day of labor, travel, or market work. Yet, despite the apparent luxury, these spaces carry hidden hazards. Crowds are the first and most obvious risk. Hundreds of people often occupy a single hall or pool simultaneously. Moving through narrow passageways or navigating slippery floors can lead to accidents. Hygiene, while the purpose of the baths, is another concern. Shared water among thousands creates a fertile environment for disease. Soap is limited, and the combination of sweat, dirt, and minor cuts can affect many visitors before anyone realizes what has occurred. Social dynamics add another layer of tension. The baths are a space for conversation, gossip, business deals, and social maneuvering. Arguments or rivalries can flare unexpectedly, turning what should be a calm environment into a setting for conflict. Certain areas of the baths, such as steam rooms or hot pools, increase the risks. The intense heat can exhaust the body. Some Romans spend hours soaking, unaware of the strain. In these environments, fainting or collapse is a real possibility. Despite these risks, the baths are central to daily life. For many, they offer essential hygiene, relaxation, and social interaction. Children splash in shallow pools under the watch of parents, while older men discuss politics and philosophy. Slaves play a crucial role in the operation of the baths. They maintain the furnaces that heat the water and scrub the floors. Their labor ensures the bathhouse functions smoothly, yet exposes them to hazards, scalding water, and constant physical exertion. Even the architecture itself carries subtle dangers. Marble floors and polished stone steps are beautiful to behold, but treacherous to traverse. And yet, for all the potential dangers, the baths remain a haven. Citizens return daily, balancing the risks against the relief of warm water. Here, in the midst of a city defined by chaos and labor, the baths offer a rare moment of calm. Still, relaxation in Rome often comes with a price. As citizens soak, the city outside continues to pulse with danger. In Rome, entertainment itself can be deadly, where crowds cheer as gladiators face life and death in the arenas. Next, we quietly step into the violent spectacle of the gladiator games, where danger becomes both entertainment and ritual. The roar of the crowd echoes through the massive stone amphitheater, carrying across the sun-baked sands of the arena. For the citizens of Rome, the gladiator games are more than just entertainment. They are a spectacle of life and death. It is a ritual that captivates, excites, and unnerves all who witness it. These games take place in arenas built with precision, the Colosseum being the most famous example. Tens of thousands of spectators gather, filling tiered seats that rise high above the arena floor. Flags flutter in the wind, merchants sell refreshments, and trumpets announce the arrival of combatants. The atmosphere is electric, charged with anticipation and the knowledge that today someone will fight and possibly die. Gladiators, often slaves, prisoners of war, or condemned criminals, prepare for combat with rigorous discipline. Their training is brutal, their bodies hardened to endure pain and injury. Yet no amount of preparation guarantees survival. Each match is unpredictable. A single miscalculation, a poorly timed strike, or a moment of hesitation can be fatal. The arena itself is a carefully constructed stage of danger. Sand covers the ground, softening falls, but also hiding debris. Obstacles may be placed to challenge the fighters, and occasionally, exotic animals are introduced to increase the spectacle. Lions, leopards, or bears brought from distant provinces. Their sharp claws and teeth a deadly hazard to both man and beast. Spectators experience a mix of thrill and anxiety. The games are designed to inspire emotion cheers for skillful strikes, gasps for near misses. The thrill is intoxicating, but so too is the reminder of mortality. Every combatant is human. Every strike carries the possibility of permanent injury or death. For the gladiators, the danger is constant. They train relentlessly in the ludi, learning how to wield swords, shields, and spears with precision. They practice defensive maneuvers and endurance drills, but even the most skilled can be defeated in an instant. Injuries, cuts, broken bones, or concussions are common, and medical care is often basic. The political aspect of the games adds another layer of risk and intrigue. Wealthy patrons sponsor fighters. They seek favor with the emperor or visibility among the masses. The crowd's mood can shift unpredictably. Their cheers and boos may influence decisions, even determining the fate of a defeated gladiator. A thumbs up may grant mercy, a thumb down an immediate end. Beyond the physical danger, gladiators face psychological pressures as well. The knowledge that every fight could be their last hangs over them constantly. Families of free citizens watch. There is a silent acknowledgement that the entertainment they enjoy comes at the ultimate cost for someone else. Even outside the arena, the presence of violent spectacle shapes the city's rhythm. News of victories, injuries, and deaths spreads quickly. Citizens discuss tactics and favorite fighters, and yet, for all the danger and cruelty, the games are central to Roman identity. But the dangers of life in Rome are not confined to controlled arenas. Beyond the excitement, tensions simmer in the streets. Next, we explore the volatile political conflicts and public upheavals that can transform the city into a stage of chaos. Beneath the grandeur of temples, the arches of triumph, and the bustling markets, another current flows quietly through Rome, one that can erupt without warning, bringing chaos to the streets. Political conflict is not an abstract notion here. It is a living, breathing danger that touches every citizen, from the wealthiest patrician to the poorest laborer. Rome's government, a complex web of senators, magistrates, and emperors, wields immense influence, and the city is the stage upon which power is constantly negotiated. Decisions in the forum, proclamations from the Senate, or the whims of a powerful magistrate can alter the daily lives of thousands. Public opinion is a potent force, and the city thrives on attention, debate, and sometimes confrontation. Yet, with power comes tension. Citizens gather in forums, heated discussions sparking quickly into verbal disputes. What begins as disagreement can escalate when large crowds form, fueled by rumor, ambition, or anger. The densely packed streets amplify tension, and movement through the city can become dangerous when political unrest spreads. Riots are unpredictable. One day, a small protest against a tax or policy may start quietly in a narrow street or near a marketplace. Soon, voices grow louder, banners rise, and crowds swell, spilling over into adjacent streets. Merchants close their shops, fearing damage to property. Workers pause in mid-task, uncertain whether to flee or stay. Soldiers, or the vigils may arrive, attempting to maintain order, but their presence can also ignite further anger. Sometimes unrest is deliberate. Factions supporting rival politicians, or even gladiators and veterans returning from campaigns, can stir the crowds. Violence is often a tool for influence, and citizens quickly learn that visibility in a riot carries both danger and opportunity. For ordinary Romans, the risk is real. A careless step into the middle of a growing mob can lead to injury or being swept away. Personal property is rarely safe. Coins, clothing, or food may be stolen or trampled. Even those not participating must remain alert, scanning for openings to escape and avoiding narrow alleys where the pressure of the crowd can be deadly. The unpredictability of political unrest heightens tension in daily life. Citizens may wake to find a major demonstration blocking their path to work, the streets crowded with shouting voices, banners, and armed soldiers. Markets may close, and movement becomes a calculated risk. Yet political conflict is intertwined with culture. Public speeches, debates, and even riots are part of Rome's identity. They provide a sense of participation for some citizens and a warning for others. Survival requires constant awareness, adaptability, and sometimes restraint. For slaves and laborers, the risks are even higher. Masters may command them to stay home or assist in controlling property. Crowds do not discriminate. The chaotic energy of unrest can sweep through any street, affecting anyone in its path. Even as calm returns to the streets after a riot, the memory lingers. The knowledge that unrest can erupt again at any time keeps citizens cautious. Movement through the city is rarely simple, and the shadows of politics create invisible hazards in every corner and in every neighborhood. Rome's political tensions are a reminder that danger is never limited to obvious threats like collapsing buildings or disease. The city itself, alive with ambition, rivalry, and power, pulses with unpredictability. Every citizen moves through a network of forces larger than themselves. And yet, even as political storms pass, another danger silently lurks. Fires, whether accidental or intentional, have the power to destroy entire districts, consuming homes, markets, and lives in a matter of hours. Next, we step into the harrowing stories of fires that have ravaged the city, leaving smoke, ruin, and fear in their wake. The sun dips low over Rome, casting long shadows across the narrow streets and tall insulae. But even as evening arrives, a quiet tension hangs in the air. For centuries, one of the greatest dangers has been fire. Fires in Rome are not mere inconveniences. They are potential disasters capable of consuming entire neighborhoods in hours. The city is dense, with insulae stacked precariously high. One spark or a knocked-over oil lamp can ignite a chain reaction. Imagine a crowded district in the heart of the city. Families live in close quarters, sharing staircases and narrow hallways. A candle falls in a second-floor apartment. The flames catch the wooden beams, climbing upward with frightening speed. Smoke fills the stairwell, choking residents as they scramble toward exits, carrying children and their families' only possessions. Panic spreads as quickly as the fire itself. Neighbors shout warnings, but the thick smoke and intense heat make communication difficult. Some attempt to fight the blaze with buckets of water or wet cloths, but in many cases, these efforts are futile. The fire consumes the materials of the buildings faster than they can be defended. In wealthier districts, fire brigades, early versions of the vigils, may arrive, equipped with pumps, buckets, and axes. Yet even trained responders struggle against the ferocity of a fully engulfed insula. In poorer neighborhoods, the residents face the fire alone, relying on courage, speed, and a little luck to survive. The aftermath is devastating. Buildings are reduced to charred timbers and smoldering rubble. Streets are coated in ash. Families who escaped may return to find their homes and livelihoods gone. Markets collapse and shops vanish. For the poor, a fire can be catastrophic, erasing everything they have struggled to build. Sometimes fires start accidentally. Other times, they are deliberately used as weapons during riots or acts of sabotage. Regardless of the cause, the results are always the same: loss, fear, and uncertainty. Yet life in Rome continues. The city is resilient. Rebuilding begins almost immediately, using whatever materials are available. Communities come together. Markets reopen. Workshops resume their work, and citizens navigate the streets once more. The threat of fire shapes the way Romans live. Buildings are designed with narrow corridors, and vigilance becomes part of everyday life. Citizens learn to handle oil lamps carefully and keep buckets of water nearby. But survival is never guaranteed. As night falls, the glow of a distant fire may flicker on the horizon, a haunting reminder of the city's vulnerability. For centuries, Rome has endured these flames, yet the danger is never fully gone. Danger in ancient Rome comes in many forms, some sudden, some creeping. Fires destroy homes, yet disease and crime linger quietly. Rome thrives, yet its pulse is always tied to risk. Every street and building holds a story of survival or loss. Could an ordinary person from today truly survive in ancient Rome? Or would the city's hidden perils claim them? This thought sets the stage for our next exploration: the psychological toll of living in such an unpredictable world. Even beyond the streets, markets, and flames of Rome, the city and the empire it anchors faces another set of dangers. These are born not of human hands, but of the natural world. Earthquakes, storms, floods, and other forces remind Romans of their vulnerability. Earthquakes are perhaps the most unpredictable of these threats. Tremors have occasionally shaken the city, rattling insulae, temples, and aqueducts. Citizens would wake suddenly in the middle of the night, unsure whether the ground itself had turned against them. Wooden beams groan and tiles fall. In a city so densely packed, even a moderate tremor can create chaos. People stumble down staircases, and structural collapse is a lingering danger. Storms bring their own hazards. Summer thunderstorms can swell rivers and flood streets, sending mud and debris racing through narrow alleys. Roofs leak, and upper floors are particularly vulnerable as water infiltrates weak wooden beams and crumbling plaster. Citizens hurry to cover food and protect belongings, but in the chaos, accidents happen. A slippery street or a falling shutter can lead to injury. Floods are a persistent concern for those near the Tiber. Heavy rain and the river's unpredictable flow can inundate lower-lying districts. Streets transform into rivers, washing away market stalls and possessions, forcing entire neighborhoods to evacuate temporarily. Houses on low foundations are especially at risk, their ground floors often submerged in water, mud, and debris. Fire is often intertwined with natural forces as well. Lightning strikes tall buildings or ignites wooden beams during storms. Wind spreads flames rapidly through dense neighborhoods. Nature can amplify the hazards that already exist in the city. Heat waves in summer and bitter cold in winter add quieter threats. Romans without adequate shelter struggle with exhaustion or hypothermia. The poor, crowded into insulae, are particularly vulnerable. Even the well-off must ensure their water supplies and stored foods are protected. Disease often follows in the wake of natural disasters. Flooded streets and contaminated wells can lead to outbreaks of fever or dysentery. When a storm or earthquake strikes, the city's fragile infrastructure, its roads and aqueducts can be damaged, compounding the difficulty of survival. Yet, for all this danger, life goes on. Romans learned to anticipate the seasons, prepare for storms, and observe the signs of tremors. Communities often come together to rebuild after floods or storms, sharing resources and labor in a city that has endured centuries of events. In this way, natural dangers are woven into the fabric of life. Humans remain at the mercy of the world around them. A sudden earthquake or a swollen river can turn daily routines into life-or-death struggles within moments. And beyond the physical threats lies another invisible challenge, the psychological strain of knowing danger is always close. Next, we step into the psychological stress of city life, exploring how constant risk shapes the minds and hearts of Romans. Life in ancient Rome is not only a test of physical endurance, but also of mental resilience. For those who navigate the city's crowded streets, precarious buildings, and bustling markets, stress is a constant, invisible companion. It quietly shapes daily routines, interactions, and even dreams. From the moment a Roman awakens in an insula or crowded household, awareness of danger is instinctive. The narrow staircases leading down to the streets may creak or sway. The walls above may groan under the weight of neighbors, and the threat of fire or collapse is never far from thought. Every decision when to leave home, which route to take, even what to carry is influenced by the risk that surrounds them. The streets themselves contribute to anxiety. Pedestrians must weave through carts, animals, and crowds, all moving unpredictably. A sudden shout, a dropped bundle, or a misbehaving animal can provoke immediate tension. Noise is unending. Vendors call their wares, children play and cry, and distant clatter from construction adds to the ceaseless hum. Even a brief lapse in attention may lead to a fall, a collision, or worse, reinforcing the constant vigilance that city life demands. Illness and contamination amplify this stress. Water may be tainted, food may spoil, and disease can spread silently through crowded neighborhoods. Parents worry for their children, workers consider their weakened bodies, and the poor struggle with the reality that one misstep could disrupt survival. Economic pressures add another layer. Daily wages are never guaranteed, jobs are risky, and the poor live in constant negotiation with scarcity. For slaves, the mental burden is heavier still. Obedience, subservience, and the threat of punishment are daily realities. Even the well-off must navigate political tensions, social expectations, and the subtle threats of public unrest. The city itself demands attention, strategy, and adaptation. Social stress permeates every interaction. Trust is a fragile commodity. In markets, thieves and opportunists lurk. In crowded neighborhoods, neighbors compete for resources. Friendships and alliances are critical for survival. but they require effort, observation, and vigilance. The city's rhythm ensures that stress is rarely absent. Morning brings the rush to secure work and food. Midday involves navigating crowded streets and bustling markets. Evening may offer rest, but with fires, crime, and political unrest as ever-present possibilities, relaxation is never guaranteed. Sleep itself may be light and punctuated by anxiety, aware that even during rest, the city outside holds danger. Yet, in the midst of this tension, Romans develop remarkable resilience. Humans adapt to constant risk. Families, friends, and neighbors form support networks. Daily routines, while fraught with peril, become familiar. Skills of observation, quick decision-making, and caution are cultivated over a lifetime. The mind learns to balance fear with necessity, stress with action. Still, the psychological toll is undeniable. Life in Rome is a subtle, persistent challenge, demanding not only physical survival, but also mental endurance. The knowledge that every street and building carries some degree of risk shapes the way citizens live, work, and even dream. And as stress accumulates, it is impossible to ignore the stark contrast between wealth and poverty. While danger touches all, it is experienced differently depending on social standing, and those disparities are felt deeply. Next, we step into that contrast, comparing rich and poor Romans, and exploring how wealth can change the experience of living. In the bustling heart of Rome, the experience of daily life is strikingly different depending on one's wealth and status. While the city's streets and markets are shared by all, the rich and poor navigate these spaces under vastly different circumstances. The wealthy live in domus, spacious private homes, often constructed of sturdy stone and marble, featuring private courtyards and fountains. Air flows more freely, and the structure itself is reinforced to withstand collapse or fire far better than the crowded apartments of the poor. In contrast, the poor live in insulate towering apartment buildings of wood and brick, often cramped, unstable, and shrouded in shadow. One family may occupy a single small room. Floors sag under the weight of residence, and fire is a constant threat. Food access further separates the classes. Wealthy Romans enjoy fresh produce, imported delicacies, and meat prepared in private kitchens. For the poor, meals are simpler, often based on bread or porridge. Malnutrition is a quiet, constant companion, as spoilage is frequent. Work and labor divide them as well. The wealthy engage in politics or philosophy, while the poor face physically taxing and hazardous toil. Construction, port work, or street vending provide minimal protection. Survival itself requires immense endurance, skill, and a bit of luck. Even hygiene is experienced differently. Wealthy homes have private latrines and running water, while the poor rely on public fountains. Infections spread rapidly in crowded quarters, making illness a persistent and invisible danger for those living in close proximity to waste. Public spaces like baths are open to all, but the rich visit at quieter times, avoiding the crowded pools and noise. Yet the city is one ecosystem. When fire breaks out or the Tiber floods, even the wealthy are reminded of their vulnerability. Psychologically, the contrast is stark. The poor live with perpetual vigilance, calculating every meal and interaction as a means of survival. Still, life in Rome carries complexity. Social mobility exists in small measures, and alliances can change one's circumstances overnight. The gap between comfort and hardship remains tangible, influencing everything from the buildings one inhabits to the risks one faces. Life in Rome is shaped by choices, chance, and personal resilience. It is a constant negotiation between environment and society. Could an ordinary person from today truly endure life in ancient Rome, amidst its dangers, crowded streets, and ceaseless challenges? Imagine, for a moment, that someone from today, a visitor from the modern world, steps quietly into the streets of ancient Rome. They arrive with all the conveniences of the present: clean water, refrigeration, electricity, and healthcare. But in this world, 2,000 years ago, none of those comforts exist. Survival depends entirely on skill, awareness, and adaptability to a city teeming with dangers. At first, the visitor might be awestruck by the grandeur. Marble temples gleam in the sunlight, and massive arches mark civic pride. Bustling marketplaces overflow with goods, spices, and fabrics from across the empire. Crowds move like rivers through narrow streets, merchants shout their wares, and children dart between carts and animals. It is a vivid, alive city, unlike anything in modern life. But awe quickly gives way to awareness of risk. Every step must be considered. Streets are uneven, slick with mud or waste. Carts, horses, and donkeys move unpredictably, threatening collisions with pedestrians. Narrow alleys and crowded forums hide pickpockets and thieves. The insolent tall apartment buildings that house most Romans pose a more personal challenge. Floors creak ominously. Staircases are narrow and unstable, and smoke from cooking fires fills the hallways. The visitor would notice the smell of overcrowding, the absence of sanitation, and the ever-present threat of fire. In these cramped spaces, disease spreads silently, food is limited, and privacy is non-existent. Water and food become daily calculations. Drinking water may be contaminated, and bread can be stale or moldy. Illness could strike at any moment. Without modern medicine, even minor ailments may become serious, making survival a constant negotiation. Traveling further, the visitor might glimpse the more extreme hazards. Gladiator games showcase violence in arenas, and public unrest can erupt into riots. Fires, whether accidental or deliberate, consume entire districts in a single night. Even the natural world is unforgiving. Sudden storms, floods, or earthquakes can turn daily routines into life-threatening challenges. Psychologically, the stress would be intense. The constant awareness of danger would weigh heavily. Sleep may be light, anxiety subtle but persistent, as every decision carries potential consequences. The mind adapts slowly to such unpredictability, yet human resilience is remarkable. Over time, the visitor might find strategies to survive. Observation becomes a tool. Understanding social norms and small acts of caution like avoiding congested markets could significantly improve chances of survival. Ancient Rome is a city of extremes: opulence and poverty, leisure and labor, life and sudden death. Survival in such a city requires more than strength. It demands awareness, adaptability, and a deep understanding of hazards. It is a delicate balance between awe and caution, curiosity and fear, and the ever-present tension between thriving and merely enduring. And as we step back, it becomes clear that life in ancient Rome was a delicate, intricate dance between danger and daily existence. Next, we quietly reflect on all we've seen, as we prepare to draw our journey through ancient Rome to a gentle, contemplative close. As the city of Rome slowly settles into the quiet of evening, the clamor of streets, markets, and workshops begins to fade. The noise of carts, animals, and shouting merchants is replaced by the soft creak of insulae settling, distant voices echoing from the forum, and the gentle rustle of leaves in courtyards. For those who survive the day's challenges, the night offers a rare moment to breathe, to reflect, and to prepare for what tomorrow may bring. Life in ancient Rome, as we have explored, was a delicate balance between grandeur and danger, comfort and struggle. For the wealthy, life offered relative safety, luxury, and control. For the poor, for slaves, and for ordinary citizens navigating crowded streets, every day carried uncertainty, risk, and effort. Fires, disease, crime, political unrest, and natural disasters all shaped the rhythm of existence, reminding everyone that the city's beauty and power were inseparable from its peril. Yet, despite these hardships, Rome was resilient. Its people, rich and poor, alike adapted, persevered, and found moments of joy amidst chaos. Markets thrived, streets buzzed with life, children played between narrow alleys, and communities supported one another through danger and difficulty. Even slaves, bound by circumstance, found ways to survive and sometimes even thrive, weaving human resilience into the very fabric of the city. Perhaps the most striking lesson of ancient Rome is that survival was not merely about strength or skill, it was about awareness and adaptability. Every footstep in the city, every decision about where to walk, what to eat, or whom to trust, was shaped by both opportunity and risk. Citizens learned to navigate not only the physical dangers of buildings, streets, and animals, but also the unseen hazards of disease and social pressures. As we step back from the crowded insulae, the bustling markets, and the arenas filled with cheering spectators, it becomes clear that Rome was more than an empire of marble, conquest, and politics. It was a living, breathing city of human experiences, each heartbeat echoing with tension, perseverance, and the quiet victories of daily life. Tonight, as we leave the city in its gentle twilight, imagine the soft flicker of oil lamps through open windows, the distant laughter of children playing in quiet courtyards, and the calm settling over streets that once teemed with danger. Life in Rome was perilous, yes, but it was also profoundly human, full of endurance and the small triumphs that make existence meaningful. So as you close your eyes, let the city's rhythms fade into the quiet of your own imagination. The dangers, the chaos, the triumphs all are now tucked safely into the past. And in this calm reflection, perhaps we can carry a sense of wonder and resilience from the streets of ancient Rome into our own dreams. Good night.